A shotgun marriage, also known as a shotgun wedding, is an informal phrase coined in Americana that commonly refers to a marriage forced to take place when a woman becomes pregnant out of wedlock. The baby's father is forced to marry her, so she will not give birth without the benefit of a husband. The marriage generally is intended to guarantee that the woman and child's future is financially stable. Those phrases originated in the fact that on multiple occasions, men were actually coerced at gunpoint into marriage, as exemplified by the following from the Cincinnati Enquirer out of Cincinnati, Ohio, on Monday, April 15th, 1872.
Pistol persuasion! A man married against his will sues for divorce. A novel suit for dissolution of marriage tie was filed yesterday on behalf of William Froebel versus Mary Olhausen. The petitioner alleges that on 8th of April last, at 6 o'clock in the morning, the marriage ceremony was performed between him and the defendant at the house of William Olhausen. Said ceremony being forced on him by the aid and procurement of certain evil-disposed persons, and conducted by Reverend Walker D. Shoemate, who certified to the marriage against the will and consent of the plaintiff. He further declares that the whole proceedings were false and fraudulent, and then relates the facts of the case as follows. On the day in question, at 5 in the morning, William Terry, uncle of defendant, and William Olhausen, her father, presented themselves at the door of his sleeping apartment in the house of one of Eaches, a farmer, by whom he was employed, and then there compelled him, by threats of death, by shooting, to proceed to the house of Olhausen, about a half-mile distant, to marry the defendant. In consequence of these threats, plaintiff got up, dressed himself, and went to Olhausen's house, where he remained half an hour, long enough for the performances of the ceremony, which, in spite of protest, entreaties, and tears, was forced upon him at the muzzle's mouth. He alleges, however, that he consistently refused to use the words of assent in the ceremony, constantly declaring that it was no act of his. Plaintiff further alleges that he left the house immediately after the conclusion of the mock ceremony and has never visited and will never visit defendant again, and finally that the marriage never has been and never shall be consummated. He therefore pleads for a release from the unwelcome bonds thus imposed upon him by the judicial declaration of invalidity.
However, as societal norms changed, shotgun weddings became less frequent. Not only did the overall practice of settling issues with guns generally fall out of favor, financial support by means of government aid became available to single mothers. Birth control and abortion also provided more options. Single motherhood became fairly accepted, and mothers without husbands became not only more frequent, but more normalized as well. Although the title, shotgun wedding/shotgun marriage, were merely American phrases, other countries picked up on the phrase and the very concept. The Japanese term dekachata kikan is slang for a marriage necessitated by accidental pregnancy, but was not a term introduced until the late 1990s. The loose translation of the phrase means it's already happened marriage or oops marriage. A Dutch term, moetie, from the Netherlands and Belgium, describes a wedding resulting from a pregnancy, made from the noun moeten, must or have to, with the suffix yi, diminutive or little. In China, the term fengji shenghan, married by the order of child, means that the couple married because conception occurred outside of marriage. In Korea, the term sokdo iban literally means speeding over the limit and refers to the situation in which the pregnancy preceded the marriage. In Vietnam, the term baksi bao koi, literally meaning because the doctor said so, is often used with humorous intention. And when it comes to a song that describes a wedding that shouldn't be happening, to the narrator at least, none hit harder than the 1982 chart-topping Billy Idol hit,
It's a nice day for a white wedding. Hey little sister, who's your Superman?
Hello to all of you wanting to start again, and welcome on back to Heard It in a Love Song, the show where we take a trip to the past to discover the history of a love song we all know and love. My name is Richard Hunt, and this week we are heading to the UK to look into Billy Idol and his white wedding.
It's a big party, New York and America. Get ready, it's Billy Idol.
We start our story on November 30th, 1955, in Stanmore, Middlesex, England, about an hour outside of London. That is where and when we meet up with Bill and Joan Broad, two devout church-going Anglicans who just welcomed to the world their first child, a baby boy named William Michael Albert Broad. The family didn't stay in Stanmore long, and by the time little William was 2 years old, they had moved nearly 4,000 miles to Long Island, New York, specifically the village of Patchogue, in an aim to capture the American dream. For 4 formative years, William Broad lived the picturesque life of a young American, coonskin cap on head and a picture of JFK in hand. He even had a new baby sister, Jane. But New York wasn't what they were hoping it would be, so they moved back across the pond to Dorking, Surrey, about an hour outside of London in the opposite way that Stanmore was. Although he was back on the land he was born in, his classmates called him Yank and teased him for his Yankee accent, setting him up to one day make music for those beaten and bullied. Billy enjoyed a fairly normal childhood, hanging out with his pals and getting up to the usual mischief strong-willed boys are wont to do. The Broads were a religious family who regularly attended church, which led him to be very disappointed when Billy joined the Boy Scouts in Goring, only to be asked to leave after getting caught kissing a girl. In an interview with UltimateClassicRock.com, he said the following: "It broke my mother's heart because the Scouts were very connected to the school. My mother was very religious, so she was very involved in it all. Yeah, it was the Scouts summer fair or something, and I was snogging this girl on the grass in front of everybody. They threw me out for that. Crikey, I should have gotten a badge." Around this same time, his grandfather bought him a guitar at one of London's Woolworth stores, and he soon began learning chords from an instruction book. Billy was a bright student and passed his 11+, which is basically the class you're in from 11 to 12, but he was bored at school. When the teacher wrote "William is idle" in the margin of one of his works, it stuck in his mind and later inspired his stage name. Nevertheless, Billy progressed well, and when the family moved about an hour north to Bromley in Kent in 1971, he transferred to the Ravensbourne Grammar School. Now a teenager, he listened to American artists like Iggy and the Stooges, Lou Reed, the New York Dolls, and the Doors, and soon he was writing his own tunes in a similar vein. The distractions of London, however, were not conducive to studying, and he failed to achieve the requirements for university entrance. His disappointed parents arranged for him to retake his exams at Orpington College of Further Education, and it was there that he would enjoy the more relaxed environment, and by the time a year passed, he had secured his place at Sussex University. He began his courses in English and philosophy in September 1975. However, the timing of this was horrible, as the explosion of the punk rock scene had captured Will's far stronger than Billy's.
Music and attitude were the common ground binding together what was to become known as the Bromley contingent.
He started hanging out with a group of like-minded friends at the inn venues of London, instantly recognizable by their Malcolm McLaren sex shop clothes and peg pants. They became known as the Bromley contingent. This contingent included Susie Sue, later of Susie and the Banshees, and they began following the Sex Pistols to every gig. I watched the Pistols go from when they were doing covers. Then one week I went and they put in a new song, and it was pretty vacant. It wasn't just a song, it was a great song. And then, like a week or so after that, they brought in Anarchy in the UK. And I mean, when you heard that, it was just like, this is the anthem of our times. We just sort of believed in what we were seeing, really. I had an innate belief that this was what our generation had to do. At this time, William Broad changed his name to Billy Idol, I-D-O-L, to avoid any crossover association with Monty Python's Eric Idle. He decided that being part of this new punk rock revolution was far more pressing than going to school, and this meant dropping out of university and forming his first band, the Rockettes, with his classmate Stephen Upstone. They played covers of various bands, the Animals, the Beatles, the Doors. They'd play in the campus cafeteria and one gig outside the university at a local youth hall, though they never recorded. However, they did audition for famed music managers Malcolm McLaren and Bernie Rhodes, who had managed artists like Subway Sect, The Specials, Dexy's Midnight Runners, Joe Boxers, The Loos, the Black Arabs, 20 Flight Rockers, and Watts. In a devastating blow, they told Steve that he was the real star. This, paired with his father's doubt and disapproval, only served to make Billy more determined. In late 1976, he joined the newly formed West London 1960s retro rock band Chelsea as a guitarist. The act's singer and frontman, Gene October, styled Idol's image, advising him to change his short-sighted eyeglasses for contact lenses and dye his hair blonde with a crew cut for a retro 1950s rocker look. Interestingly enough, the group also featured future Clash guitarist Mick Jones and future Damned guitarist Brian James. After a few weeks performing with Chelsea, Idol and Tony James, who was playing bass, quit the band. It was at this purgatory period of his life that he would have a brief stunt in a band of one of his close friends, Susie and the Banshees. But soon he realized he wanted to branch out and lead his own band, so he, along with Tony James, co-founded Generation X. The final Generation X lineup was Tony James on bass, John Toe on drums, Bob Andrews on guitar, and Billy Idol on lead vocals. And they played their first live show in November 1976, and soon after began writing and recording original material. In 1977, Chrysalis Records offered them a contract. Generation X was one of the first punk bands to appear on the BBC show Top of the Pops. It was at this time that Billy Idol's trademark bleach blonde hair was born. In an interview with Rolling Stone, he said that he had originally planned to have his naturally dark hair augmented with blue highlights, until a friend who was helping him got it wrong. She bleached my hair because you bleach the hair first to put these blue highlights in, and then you dye it black again. Then she reached into a bag and went, "Oh, I haven't got the highlights, so I can't really do what we were going to do. I'll get them and we'll do it next week." So I kind of looked in the mirror and went, well, this isn't that bad actually. This is kind of a bit of a laugh. It was a bit orangey, but it was cool, especially for a punk. Although a punk rock band, they're inspired by mid-60s British pop, in sharp contrast to their more militant peers, with Idol stating, "We were the opposite of the Clash and the Pistols. They were singing no Beatles or the Rolling Stones, but we were honest about what we liked." The truth was, we were all building our music on the Beatles and the Stones. Generation X would bring a new light by means of positivity, pop, and romance to the punk scene that had been culturally defined by its negativity and borderline nihilistic attitude towards the opposite sex. They'd release everything from singles like Wild Youth and Ready, Steady, Go, to personal story songs like The Prime of Kenny Silvers.
Kenny Silvers, the boy who disappeared.
After 3 albums, Generation X, Valley of the Dolls, and Kiss Me Deadly, with management problems, band discord, and the decline of the punk movement, Billy decided it was time to go solo. Much like his father before him, Billy moved across the pond to New York to capture his wildly different idea of the American dream. It was there that Billy met and began working with former Kiss manager Bill Alcoin. Bill would go on to manage not only Billy Idol, but Manowar, Lordi, and Tantric. Bill, seeing the talent and raw energy in Billy Idol, helped him to put a band together. Steve Stevens on guitar, Phil Fiat on bass, and Greg Gerson on drums. Idol's solo career began with the Chrysalis Records EP titled Don't Stop in 1981, which included the Generation X song Dancing With Myself, originally recorded for their last album, Kiss Me Deadly.
Oh, with the record selection and the mirror's reflection, I'm a dancing with myself.
And a cover of Tommy James and the Shondells song, Mony Mony. The band, along with producer and songwriter Keith Forsey, got to work on Billy Idol's eponymous debut album. Now, Keith Forsey is just an absolute powerhouse in terms of songwriting, as he has written the following.
Don't you forget about me. The heat is on. The heat is on.
Looking for some hot stuff, baby, this evening. I need some hot stuff, baby, tonight. Never-ending story.
The album was recorded between 1981 and 1982 at Westlake Studios in Los Angeles. Artists that have recorded at Westlake include Donna Summer, Quincy Jones, Aaliyah, Missy Elliott, Madonna, Justin Timberlake, and Marilyn Manson.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Notable recordings produced at Westlake Studios have included Michael Jackson's album Thriller, recorded from April to November 1982, and Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill from 1994 to 1995. And if you haven't checked out the episode about Alanis Morissette, check the link below. As a bit of an aside here, while working on his self-titled debut solo album in Los Angeles, Billy Idol rented a bungalow at the Chateau Marmont on Sunset Boulevard. On March 5th, 1982, he awoke at 3 a.m. to discover that there was nothing to drink, so he destroyed his room. Later that day, the police arrived and a naked Idol surrendered. He later learned that they were not there for him, but were investigating another Chateau Marmont resident, actor John Belushi, who had overdosed and died that same night.
Good evening, I'm Marty McNeely for WGN News. Comic actor John Belushi died today at a rented hotel bungalow in the Hollywood Hills. Authorities say that cause of death is believed to have been a heart attack. Fire department medics said they were called to the hotel where they found Belushi unconscious and choking. Belushi, who was raised in the west suburban Wheaton area, rose to national fame on Saturday Night Live.
Billy Idol was released on July 16, 1982. 3 singles were released from the album. Dancing with Myself, which was already released in 1981 as Idol's debut single, the lead single, Hot in the City, which peaked at number 23 on the Billboard 100, and the track released smack dab in the middle is this week's topping, White Wedding. Now, I love a good urban legend, and that is exactly what we have this week. We started this episode off with a look into the history of shotgun weddings, and as you may well know, that is a huge part of the lyrical structure of White Wedding. And while it is true that the wedding in White Wedding is indeed a shotgun wedding, where the urban legend comes in is that the song is not actually about his little sister like the lyrics would have you believe. While Billy does admit that his sister's then upcoming nuptials did inspire the song, it only brought upon the general idea and not the lyrical content. The real plot of the song and video is that the singer's ex, whom he refers to as little sister, which in the UK at the time was slang for girlfriend, has just engaged in a shotgun wedding, which he was not pleased about. In fact, there is no actual indication that they have even broken up, so throughout the song, he is questioning her decision. He also presents the world as an unfair, dangerous place, from which, by means of this shotgun marriage, she's trying to derive some good from in the world. Or as Idol puts it, she's making an effort to start again. The bride in the video is Perry Lister, Billy Idol's girlfriend at the time, who was known as a background singer in the band Visage, a part of the punk dance troupe Hot Gossip, and also for appearing in many videos for Duran Duran. The video for the song helped launch Billy Idol to stardom, and it was directed by David Mallet. Now, David Mallet is huge in terms of directing videos, having directed the videos for
I want to ride my bicycle. I want to ride my bike. I'm so up on good. She's so cold.
I give a damn about my reputation.
Run to the hills. Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. You should be all night long.
and he also directed one of my top 5 favorite musicals, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
I look handsome, I look smart, I am a walking work of art.
Back then, Idol had little cash, so Mallet cut him a break on his fee. The concept of the video was a nightmare wedding, with a goth guy, Billy Idol, marrying a normal girl, Perry Lister, with some vampire imagery thrown in. The resulting video contains some of the most indelible images seen on MTV, including a barbed wire wedding ring, which was actually real barbed wire on the insistence of Perry Lister, and MTV actually initially censored the scene where her finger can be seen bleeding. There's a motorcycle crashing through the church window, and the dancers slapping their own asses in time to the music. Mallet said of Idol in the book I Want My MTV, in those days, he was the greatest looker and mover since Elvis. Before White Wedding, nobody would have admitted that was even possible. One look at that video, and they got him. The video was used in the movie The Wedding Singer. After getting dumped at the altar, Adam Sandler tells his friends to turn this crap off. Idol later appears in the movie as himself, helping to get Adam Sandler together with Drew Barrymore, which comes full circle since the two had met when Drew was only 11. In the US, White Wedding peaked at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100 on July 2nd, 1983. Now, I've been calling it White Wedding, when in fact it is actually called White Wedding Part 1. There is a White Wedding Part 2, and in fact they are intended to be listened to in order. White Wedding Part 2 is a more synthier continuation of Part 1. White Wedding has been covered many times, including
Hey little sister, what have you done? Hey little sister, who's the only one?
Hey little sister, who's your Superman? Hey little sister, who's the one you want? Hey little sister, shotgun. It's a nice day to start again. It's a nice night for Black Wedding.
and White Wedding comes in at 147 beats per minute. There are not many songs that hit like White Wedding. Billy Idol hit at such a specific time in music history when punk needed a revitalization, and White Wedding was exactly that. That's why this won't be the only Billy Idol episode I do. This week's Love Homework is another gun-based song about your ex's wedding with a very different outcome. LA County by Lyle Lovett.
Well, I did not say much, I just stood there watching, except 45 told them goodbye.
And that's it, the end of another love song history lesson. If you like what you learned, and you'd like to continue learning, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a like below, and join me again next week for the history of a love song we all know and love. Until next time, remember it's a nice day to start again, and remember, you heard it in a love song.
You better get out of my way, Billy. You're gonna get hurt.
Oh, yeah? Don't you talk to Billy Idol that way.